time with family, staying active, doing what you love. We understand how important it is to live your best life, even as times are changing. At Holzer, we strive to help every patient achieve their best health during every stage of life. With more options for care through in-person and virtual visits, we are dedicated to providing you with excellent care every time. Live your best life with Holzer.
Welcome to the newest episode of Talk of the Town, brought to you by Holzer Health System and the Gay County Chamber of Commerce. I'm Josh Wellington, Executive Director of the Chamber. Joining me today from WJEH-FM 93.1, where you can hear this podcast every Sunday, is Tom Susman. Tom, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me here today. It's enjoyable.
It's you've had the station, and for those who don't know, I got my radio start and really my advertising start and built my background in marketing at 93.1 about... at this point, probably 8 years ago. We're in there on Portsmouth Road, just outside of town. And you've had the station now for how long?
Well, I bought it January 1, 2000, 2.5 months before the pandemic hit.
So not 2021?
Yeah, I bought it in 2020.
2020, okay.
Right before the pandemic hit.
Right.
And so here we are. It's in 2022 and still having fun. So...
a little bit about your background for those, because, just to kind of get an idea what led up to, your non-radio career and how that kind of led into being in radio.
So I grew up in a little town south of Charleston, West Virginia, Beckley, West Virginia. And my mother had a weekly newspaper. There's a little town south of there called Sophia, West Virginia. If you've ever heard of Senator Byrd from West Virginia, that's where he grew up. And
okay.
We had a weekly newspaper. And I really enjoyed running and working at the weekly newspaper. And so, about 7 or 8 years ago, WMOV over in Ravenswood became available. And I thought, it's an AM station, the price was right. And my goal is to turn MOV into kind of like a weekly newspaper of Jackson County, West Virginia. Okay. So that's why I bought that station. JEH became available in 2019, it made sense from an operation standpoint to have multiple signals within one building. Mm-hmm. And so we purchased that station in 2020.
You look at local radio, and, having been in it, you hear it every day. Nobody listens to local radio. Everything is, satellite. No one's on what we know as terrestrial radio, things like that. But I think that's a misnomer.
Well, the research doesn't bear that out. The research says that local people listen to local radio, mm-hmm. as long as you've got something on there, like we run the news, we run the weather, we have the community calendars. If you do something to anchor your radio broadcast to the local community, mm-hmm. I think people listen locally. The majority of time people listen to their radio is when they're in their car. Mm-hmm. Satellite has no local flair to it.
Right.
If you have, and we try and do this, have local flair, local talent, then I think people tune in.
We always told people, if you turn on the Weather Channel and there's tornado coverage, the people driving toward the tornado have satellite radio. The people driving away from it, local.
Absolutely.
They're the ones listening to the local weather.
Yeah, if you're listening to satellite and something goes south, you'll never get the warnings. But nonetheless, I think we craft our music to this area. We craft our news to this area. You don't get that on satellite. So it's a different animal.
And it also, local radio is, I think, the most immediate form of marketing strategy when it comes to local business. If you read it in the newspaper, you're normally reading it at home or maybe at work on a break or something. In a car, when you hear an advertisement, it's different than TV, it's different than newspaper, it's even different than billboard. You have the ability, if I'm driving down Eastern Avenue in Gallipolis and I hear a commercial for McDonald's, if I am hungry, I can immediately make that connection. And and at least entertain the thought of going to that McDonald's. I don't have to get up and put on my shoes and leave the couch and go out in the weather. And it's an immediate form of marketing for small business. And I think that's important when you're trying to reach local people.
It is, and you can, depending on the advertisement, depending on what you are and the type of radio station, it's just this automatic, I need to go to Exxon for gasoline, or I need McDonald's, or I need that pizza from Village Pizza or Graziano's or whomever. And that's a nice thing. And the other thing about radio, and we pride ourselves on this, is you can tell a story on radio that's as good as a story on TV, but with none of the production cost.
Exactly.
So we work with vendors, and we can come together and put together spots that sound like Madison Avenue, but are crafted for here. Mm-hmm. And on TV, if you're going to do that, it may be $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 for a spot. We have a very good creative group that works with folks and says, all right, what is it you want to do? And I would suggest to you that people that take advantage of that service, their spots are as good as anything coming out of Madison Avenue or any agency in Charleston or Columbus. And we can do that here locally and carry that message for them.
And we try to, keep that in mind as well here at the Chamber. If somebody comes in and says, I need help on my marketing plan, I can use my experience in radio or whatever the medium is. They don't have the pressure of a sale from me, but then I can help, whether it's with the script, whether it's with the message, things that I've learned along the way. It used to be everybody on the radio station put their phone number.
Yeah.
But nobody has the ability to drive and write at the same time. So a catchy website name in the ad is more memorable. So you have these pointers, and then we're sitting in our conference room right now recording this podcast. In the event someone couldn't make it to your studio, they can come here. We can record the audio. I can send it to you and get the production done. And they never had to leave Gallia County.
What's really interesting, and it's changed a lot. I can take my iPhone, go into a business, and get that voiceover, and that makes it a lot easier. But you talk about, we finished a commercial for a bank that is moving to a digital platform, and so our tagline is, we're building a new branch. Well, sort of, and so we have the sounds of people hammering and nailing behind it. And then we talk about their digital branch.
Right.
And we pulled down national talent to do the voice. We pulled down national sound effects. And again, so you can do so much more with radio than you can with TV on a creative basis. It's like when you read a good novel and you have that picture, you can paint that picture on the radio.
And I think on the flip side of that coin is you can have that production quality and you can use those national voices, but also you have the option, if you have local talent at local radio, they can, through their show or their public appearances, and Jerry was just here.
Jerry Barker, he's great.
Jerry has been in this market for forever.
Right.
People know Jerry, especially Gallipolis Point Pleasant, Brandy as well. Your morning show, that builds a relationship. So if you see that this person is doing the voiceover, it immediately kind of builds a sense of trust.
Correct. That
someone you spend your morning with, while you're getting ready for work, you're listening to Brandy, or your drive home, or whenever you're listening, you make that personal connection with that local talent. And then when you see them at Walmart, they want to talk. I heard that joke you told this morning, or that story that you told really touched, a part of me that made me think about this, or it's that that personal connection.
You're absolutely correct. So for the Ravenswood station, which is a news talk station, and for that station, I play a much more active role. I do some news features. I do a thing called the Jackson Connection. And one day I was out buying tomatoes across the river there from Ravenswood, right across the river. Pulled in this guy's tomato stand, and I started talking. He says, "I know that voice. You're Tom Susman." And I was like, "What?"
Right.
It is kind of the first time that happens, and so you do connect with the community. And I would suggest to you, they hear Brandy or Jerry or even Tina out, they go, "I know I've heard that voice."
Oh, absolutely, and it it lends credibility. And also being out in the community as a local station. Now, years ago, a radio remote was a lot different than it is now. The DJs were local superstars. When you look at people that were at Key FM or WTCR, these big, at the time they were locally owned, big flamethrower stations, and their talent charged back then exorbitant prices to be where you were, and it drew. But now it's the way you do remotes is different. The type of promotions you do is different, but you still have that local flavor at those things, and people will stop by because of, well, they're there. I'm going to go see how they do this, or I'm going to go get a radio station T-shirt. The things people will do for a free T-shirt blows my mind. But it's that local flavor, and you guys take it a step further, even so with on both of your stations with local sports,
right?
And I think that you and I talked earlier today about it reaching grandparents and parents. I can remember my grandpa listening just to be broadcast. He had no interest in any of the players playing, but he wanted to hear me. He would listen to the game while sitting at home reading the paper or something.
So what we're trying to do, and we've done it on the Ravenswood station, carry a lot of sports. And so on this station, we're a little slower to the game because of COVID. Last year we did River Valley football, and we hope to do that again this year. We're doing Point Pleasant baseball this spring, and we're doing some Wahama sports. Our goal is to try and become more integrated in doing that local sport. And we're also looking at some other sports that are not your traditional radio sports. We do some streaming services, and we're going to be looking at that because they're, the kids in the school system who are playing sports put a lot of time in.
Absolutely.
And they deserve the attention that in their families and whatnot to hear that. And when they're on the road, sometimes family cannot afford to go, or they're working, and so we're investing in that area of trying to build it forward.
And then at the same time, keeping the musical component here.
Yeah, we've invested a lot in the station since we've purchased it. We just launched a brand new transmitter. Our signal's located at West Columbia. We're licensed to Racine.
On top of a tough hill.
Tough hill.
Many times up on that that site.
I've had to go up there, in the middle of winter when you can't get up in the road and you got to go flick a switch. But we put a brand new transmitter in it. We got a brand new processor. Our music's a little different than when we first purchased it. We're using what is a term called superstar country. So it's classics, new country, and a little bit in between. So if you listen to us, it's a broader array.
It's songs you know.
Exactly.
It's songs that you know and you're not getting a lot of. And there's a market for every genre, I believe.
Well,
but this
is a smaller market. So
therefore,
it's really, if we're in Columbus, then you can craft a good market in new country or classic country. But I think a little more broad country. And I think if you listen to our sound, and we've tried to make sure that we're pushing it, stereo, hitting it hard, running it. I think it sounds really good. Now, it's not perfect, and every day we try and tweak it just a little bit.
I think that the superstar country format, no one can argue that country is the format of choice in this area. You can look at the fair, the entertainment we book here for River Rec, a lot of country. Part of that is affordability. You can find a country act at a lot more reasonable price than you can maybe a pop or a rock act. But it reaches a broader demographic. But you're also, with blending in some newer hits, you're able to also kind of bring in a younger aspect that you can hook and hold, while still playing the music that the parents and things want to hear. So you can hear trying to think of someone that makes sense. Somebody like a Clint Black song that you remember, or John Deere Green, Joe Diffie. But then you're also going to hear something like Fancy Like, that my 9-year-old's going to be in the back doing the dance to. A good mixture of that opens up your advertising base. And
so what we do is we work with a company called Local Radio Network, and they download, I think we have 45,000 songs on our computer. and they update those songs on a weekly basis, and they develop the playlists. So what you don't get into is kind of the repetitive 60s song rotation that you hear on a lot of stations who do their own work. I don't have the resources to have a professional music selector, program director for that purpose. And so they put together, they're a bunch of radio guys that they've really put together some really good talent. And that gives you that broad appeal, and we're seeing it in our ratings. We're seeing it in the acceptance of this. And we're also trying to limit the number of ads on the radio station, because to the degree that you limit the ads, then people listen, and then it makes that ad space more valuable.
And I think people, I'm a NASCAR fan, and I just noticed, I was listening to a race earlier this year, and it's like during one caution they went to 3 commercial breaks.
Yeah.
I'm like, I realize there's no action on the track, where they're driving around at 80 mile an hour. But I could use an update on where people stand, or, I don't need 7 minutes or 8 minutes of commercial breaks in the middle of a caution lap. So I think that, people can be overrun by commercials, but without them, there's no station.
So I was listening to a podcast on radio, and there's this guy had been in the radio business for 60 years, an older fella. And he said, look, one of the things that I remembered when I first got into this business that someone taught me is we're in the advertising business.
Absolutely.
So you've got to come with methodologies to keep people's interest, to help people sell their goods and products, and at the same time be an entertainment entity. And so we're trying to do that. That's why we brought Ohio State football to the region. We feel like that's a great ad for us. We've had it up in Ravenswood for 4 or 5 years. We get the people up there going, well, why can't you bring us the Mountaineers? The other station has the Mountaineers, and we but again, we're right on the river. And it's a good broadcast. And, Paul Kills and those folks, they do a great balance on ads to copy, and his voice is just amazing.
My opinion, the best radio voice in college football is Paul Keels.
Absolutely. And then we had Marty Brenneman on the Reds up on MOV. That was great.
And we had Marty here. Funny story about Marty. So Marty was our speaker 3 years ago at our annual awards. So this year we had Jerry Lucas, the NBA Hall of Famer. The year before we did virtual, but the year before that, so our meeting is in January. COVID hits in April, or March. So previous to that, the Reds are doing the caravan where they go around all the places. So Marty is going to be. We've already booked him, but Marty's going to be in Huntington. Mm-hmm. And for those who don't know, Marty's wife is from Ashland. Amanda grew up in Ashland, or the Boyd County area. So I make, contact with Amanda, and I'm going to say hello to her while she's there. So, staying in line for like almost 4 hours to be able to go meet Marty, and Eric Davis is there. Bob Castellini's there, which had I known what I know now. But Aquino's there. There's several players, but Marty's the reason I'm there. Right. I mean, I've got a bat for Eric Davis to sign, but Marty, I'm just there to say hello. So I go up and I introduce myself, and I say, I'll see you in a few weeks. And I go talk to his wife, and he shows up the day of the thing, and we're over at the University of Rio Grande President House, and I've got a table that's probably 4 foot by 3 foot, and I've got it covered in memorabilia. Mm-hmm. And Marty sits down, and it looks like a president signing a bill. Like there's 30 pens laying out in case one goes dry. He's picking up and just signing everything, and he starts telling stories. And I think he was still telling them when he left.
Oh, I'm sure.
That evening. But that was in January. Fast forward to April, late March. My wife and I buy our first home, and we put the customary closed, sold picture on Facebook. And the first person to congratulate us on Facebook are Marty and Amanda Brenneman.
Fantastic.
And I'm a kid who grew up hiding my radio on 700 WLW under my pillow on West Coast trips.
Right.
I'm going to bed at 9, and the game starting at 10:05 against the Dodgers. My parents still have no idea why I was so tired. The next day, anytime the Reds had a road trip. Yeah. But I grew up wanting to broadcast sports because of Marty Brenneman.
Well, and that's the thing with the Ohio State and Paul Kills. You develop a relationship with those announcers. It may be a one-sided relationship, but you still feel like they're part of your family,
Absolutely.
The voices you can count on. You know the folks when they come on. There's consistency. I mean, Jerry's been doing the afternoon show here for how long?
A long time. He was doing the afternoon show when I started in radio. So 8 years. That was my tenure. He was on the afternoons before I got there.
And so you have that, in West Virginia, they have the Hoppy Kercheval on talk line,
yes,
which you can hear on our 1360 down here. So there's this relationship that you build. It's like the nightly news folks, Walter Cronkite. You develop that relationship, that trust, and it's fun. I mean, I'm just really enjoying it.
So, radio obviously has changed exponentially over the last, just since I got into it. I mean, you look at just the ability to use technology you don't have to have a tuner. You can use apps. There's multiple ways to listen.
Well, I mean, as a person who owns stations, I mean, let's be straight. 20 years ago, I could have never bought a station.
Right.
I would have had to have been licensed by the FCC individually. I would have had to have the equipment used to run a radio station today compared to the tube days is amazing. I mean, now it's easy. My iPhone serves the purposes of probably 4 pieces of equipment.
Mm-hmm.
We were talking earlier about Audacity, which is for those of you who don't know, it's a program that allows you to put this together to edit it, if you will, kind of like a word processor, but for sound. Before those programs were thousands of dollars.
Oh yeah.
And now it's free on the internet.
Yeah.
We're getting this music, and when we bought JEH, we went through some of the old stuff as we were cleaning up a little bit, and we had I've got 5 boxes of records. I got probably a couple hundred CDs just because we wanted to keep them around. On this computer I have now, there are 45,000 songs, and it's the size of a regular desktop PC.
Yeah. I remember the drawers in the production office, the production studio at 93.1 of sound effects. Mm-hmm. Sound effects and intro music and outro music. And now
you get a storybook.
A lot of times I will go to like a YouTube, find copyright-free, royalty-free music, convert it to an MP3 with a simple free program. Right. And now I have it. And it's right there.
We pay a small subscription fee to a service where I can I put together a spot today for Hagen Zussman and put bluegrass behind it and pulled it down, and you didn't have to go get the DVD or the CD, put it, record it, come back and merge it, and then I'm not going to talk about how old like Dave was, who used to own the station, but he was in radio so long that he probably had to use the glue to
put tape together.
Together.
And you even look like we talked about remotes. You used to have board ops that were they were back at the station, but then you had basically an engineer with you. You had all this equipment.
I had a Marty. The radio it back.
Yeah.
We had that at MOV when I first got there. And, if the antenna was right, they could hear you. And if it wasn't, or if somebody stood up in front of the antenna.
Now you call in on your cell phone and you're on the radio.
Yeah. And so, like, Jerry's going to do the Wahama game, and, we're broadcasting, so it will have happened by the time this airs. But, in this little box, it's a roadcaster. All the spots are there, and he'll just push a button, and up they come.
It's amazing. And technology is not slowing down. No. As things move forward, do you see, as a station owner, what challenges do you see moving forward as technology starts to evolve even more when it comes to local radio?
I think the whole deployment of 5G, because at that point, once we have it, and it's going to be a while here because of the terrain, your digital presence will be just as important as your terrestrial radio presence. Because people, I talk to a lot of people who listen to MOV on online, and we're going to bring that this summer back for JEH. But that's so important, having that presence, because people have got those Amazon Alexas or whatever, and that's where some people get the music. That's where they get the Alexa, please play XYZ station.
Right, and country is such a unique format in the fact that, and it's maybe not so much now, but in recent years, if you want to see an art, you can go see an artist that you hear on the radio often.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pop and rock artists don't tour near as much. The accessibility to those artists is, you're never, if you're a huge fan of even a new up and coming pop star who, let's be honest, they stay popular pop stars for about 6 weeks.
Right.
And then they're gone.
Yeah.
Until the next Disney created pop star is taking their place. But in country, there are chances to buy meet and greets or to go to a festival or a fair and meet these people, get a picture with your favorite artist.
Well, that's the heritage of country music. I mean,
Yeah.
the early artists would get in the back of their truck or their car, and they drive around, West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, Virginia, the deep South to get DJs to play their music.
Right.
And then where we're located, I mean, you can go to Charleston, you can go to Huntington, you can go to Columbus, you can go to Wheeling, you can go to Pittsburgh. I mean, let's be serious. There's a lot of venues that you can see country music in our area, and so it's just a natural fit for us.
What do you, if you could, put out one message to Gallia County especially, in regards to being a locally owned, locally operated station, as we kind of wrap up, what would be that message you would want to really drive home to the listeners and people who are listening to this podcast in regards to WJH?
Well, we changed the calls from WNTO to WJEH because WJEH symbolizes a long-time commitment to this community, in the background, and that's one of the heritage calls for the radio station. We want to be involved in the community. We want to be your partner. We want to work with you and do things like, we did the video stream of the parade, and we'll do it again this year, and we'll do some sponsorships. Just get with us. We'd love to be able to partner with you all to help you promote not only the community, but your business. We're a small business, just like the bulk of the businesses in this community, and we just look forward to meeting people over the next several years as we become part of the community.
If a small business owner or a business owner in general is, or even someone who wants to put something on your community calendar to announce for their organization, best way to get in touch, to get somebody to get a hold of them to get the ball rolling? So,
I'm going to give you that phone number as you're driving down the road, but the best way is my cell phone, 304-552-2064. My name's Tom Susman. I'm one of the owners of the station. Be glad to work with you on this and help you put together your message. If you've got an event, get with us. Again, Tom Susman at 304-552-2064, or send us a message on our Facebook page. Jerry monitors it. If you've got an event, we run free community calendars. Our airs are owned by the air is owned by the public. We have a duty as a radio station to carry public messages, and we take that very seriously at our stations.
Well, Tom, I appreciate all you do for the Chamber and airing the podcast and helping us out with events and things, and I look forward to building on that. I appreciate you coming down today, and I encourage people to listen. And if you're ever wanting to know anything about the history of Gallipolis, I guess the final thought from me is look up WJH. There's some info online that will let you know, like, where the background of the station, the call letters, how they came about, and it's really an interesting find. So until next week, don't forget you can listen to every episode of the Talk of the Town on WJH FM every Sunday morning during the 8 o'clock hour. So until next week, we appreciate you tuning in, and we'll see you then.